you. So I suppose if it would be interesting to hear a bit more about how some of these cost savings that you'd found within the project where you had applied this, maybe out of necessity, which is obviously how much so much TV production is, finds corners. We're often, trying new technology out of necessity. You said that you hadn't, you hadn't surrendered any editorial control, but I suppose spinning out those stories and looking for the stories that you were going to tell on the cutting room floor, where maybe that in the past would have been a human, then that is losing. I would say, I would worry that you might lose just something that the human might have picked up on that maybe the AI didn't, or maybe the AI did a better job of it than they would have done otherwise. So, what was your experience with that?
I think that's a really good question. It is a fascinating area to sort of almost study while you're doing it, because each genre and each type of television program, I think, will react differently to this. The one I did was a natural history observational documentary scripting. So I don't know how familiar you are with ObsDoc, but it's very bullet point. So you're thinking about, you're speculating on story, which is going to be produced on location. You want people to have an idea of the sort of stuff that they could put together, and even with observational documentary, you want a framework in which to be working to. And I think that where it was really effective was to build like a theoretical structure for this observational documentary, which can change totally and will be really, it's really important that the human beings and the producers on location are in charge of the story arcs, the development and the producing. But when it comes to, say, dealing with stakeholders and channels, and you're saying, so what is it we're trying to achieve here? You can top line that, but it's kind of handy to have a bit more detail. So if you top line what you're trying to do and you put it into a structure and say, this is my series structure, and you've got the shows that come off the side of, what the kind of things you're going to be doing. For instance, let's say it's in Mongolia, there's going to be scenes where they're going off towards the Chinese border and they're going to be looking for a certain animal that lives within that area. Right, we can theorize what might happen on that as a sort of a story, and use it as a way of saying this is how we would tell that program, and that works with that observational documentary. There is, however, I totally understand what you're saying, times where the pre-production element needs its journalistic input, and you can't do that without having the information. I mean, you can. There's an AI thing called a RAG. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's a machine learning system that takes a load of information that you're teaching it with, but then it has access also to the internet. So what it does is you put in a code, you type in a prompt. I am making a TV program about X, Y, and Z. And it's got to have the most cutting edge stories about this subject. And what that will do is it will go to your data. So anything you have given it as this is the gold standard, and it will reconfigure that prompt to look online for the most up-to-date stories for that. And then it will put it in there. And I think the way to do it is to do something similar to that and then review. There's a term you may have heard of before called human in the loop. It's been bandied around quite a lot, and I think it's really important. Come back to those sort of that Oxford story, is that on our own, humans will be efficient, on its own, machine will be efficient, but together they'll work brilliantly. And I think that we'll see a lot more of that coming out, where people they don't want to rely on AI because there are things like hallucinations and bias and all kinds of things that can go wrong with an AI, but the human becomes the gatekeeper and the person in charge of the actual, the quality control. And I think so the AI then becomes an efficiency tool and an assistant rather than the person in charge. Make sense?